Hello, and welcome to the CivilTalk podcast. I'm your host, Tapasio Althaus. If you're new to the show, this is where we explore civility and social emotional learning with esteemed guests, expert insights, and practical advice to help people navigate the world. Today's guest has spent nearly 4 decades helping people answer one of the most important and often overlooked questions in leadership today. How do we build relationships that are not only successful but deeply meaningful? Dr. Carole Robin is one of the world's foremost experts on interpersonal dynamics, leadership development, and human connection. For nearly 20 years, she has taught at Stanford Graduate School of Business, where she co-led the legendary course Interpersonal Dynamics, better known by generations of MBA students as Touchy Feely. While the nickname may make people smile, the course became one of Stanford's most sought-after classes because it challenged future CEOs and leaders to master something many business schools never teach: how to truly understand another human being. Today, she's the co-founder of Leaders in Tech, where she continues helping executives develop the interpersonal skills that often determine whether great ideas become great companies. She's also the co-author of the best-selling book, Connect: Building Exceptional Relationships with Family, Friends, and Colleagues, which we will talk about this hour. Dr. Carole Robin, welcome to Civil Talk.
Thank you, Tapasio. Very nice to meet you and to be here.
Lovely. Yeah, lovely to meet you too. So I kind of want to dive into Touchy Feely, which sounds like a really fun course. And for us, most people who are not in the Stanford Graduate School of Business, you spent nearly 2 decades teaching this class. Can you tell us a little bit about the class and your experience with that?
Sure. Beyond what you've already said about the class, one of the things that I think that stands out for me most about the class is that even after I left Stanford in 2017 to start Leaders in Tech, as you mentioned, but many for many years later, I continue to get calls and visits and emails from former students who say, I just became a CEO. I owe it all to what I learned from you. You'd expect that from business school. I just raised another round of money. I owe it all to you. That's great. But the ones that are most meaningful to me are the calls that I get from students who say, I'm pretty sure you just saved my marriage. Or
Wow.
students who say, I just reconciled my relationship with my brother who I hadn't talked to for years because he voted for the wrong person. And we've reconciled our relationship. I just gave your book to my dear friend. We were struggling. We read the book together. It's completely changed our friendship. So what feels really important to me about the work is that it's more than just professional success. It's life success. It's
Mhm.
how do you develop meaningful, robust relationships in your life, not just in business.
Mhm.
And
And
so the
oh,
students, so the lasting impact of the course on the students is in their whole life. It's not just professional.
yeah. And can you explain why the course is called Touchy Feely? I'm curious about that.
So we have the course emphasizes the importance of feelings and emotions in connection. So beyond ideas, beyond connecting from here to here, we need to
Mhm.
connect from here to here. And so we put a big emphasis on a vocabulary, on developing a vocabulary of feelings. We literally give every student a laminated copy of something called the vocabulary of feelings. And the appendix in the book has the vocabulary of feelings, because it turns out that expressing feelings is a really important part of becoming known and allowing ourselves to be more fully and richly known.
Mhm.
But it's also an important part of giving effective feedback. So, which is another component in the core, giving feedback that actually builds relationship instead of
Mhm.
hurting relationship. And so, because feelings are such an integral part of the whole learning, the students call it touchy feely. Plus,
Gotcha.
it's a double entendre, right? Because touchy feely is like that soft stuff.
Yeah. How do you, you know, you're talking about feedback right now. What would be a successful way of incorporating feelings into feedback?
So let's say you're doing something that is uh, bugging me or irritating or I think detrimental to our relationship, and I want to give you feedback about it. So the first thing to remember in giving effective feedback is to be behaviorally specific instead of labeling people or assuming you know why they're doing what they're doing. Um, and if I include the impact of your behavior on me using feeling words, then I make myself vulnerable in the process of giving you feedback. So I equalize some of the power differential that happens when you give feedback when I put myself in it. There's disclosure embedded in good feedback by way of feelings. So, you know, when that was the third time we walk out of a meeting, you interrupted me 4 times during that meeting. And I found myself getting increasingly more irritated. And you started the meeting by saying you wanted to hear from everybody. And I was less and less inclined to offer up my opinion as a result of that. And that's why I'm telling you this, because I don't think that's what you intended. So that's how I give you feedback and include my feelings as well as your behavior, its impact, and my intent in telling you.
Yeah. So you entered the Stanford classroom, witnessing human behavior in real time for almost 20 years.
Yes.
How did it, a long time, to sort of change the syllabus and just grow and expand and shift. What did your students eventually teach you that you could not have learned from theory alone?
Well, one thing, that's a wonderful question. One of the things that they taught me over and over and over again was how hard this work is, how much work it takes to actually, it's one thing to hear about it in theory. It sounds kind of simple, um,
Mm-hmm.
but the execution of it over and over and over again is so difficult. And I loved teaching, and I continue to love teaching leaders in tech participants because it's this constant reminder of how we're all works in progress. So something that worked for you in our exchange, that worked for you last month, suddenly doesn't work. Um, something, something that was working great in our relationship a year ago is suddenly not working. So there's something about being vigilant all the time and
Mm-hmm.
paying attention to what's going on for me, for you, and for us, um, that requires a lot of effort and a lot of work.
Yeah, I think that when it comes down to it, like you said before, one thing that you can't learn in theory is just doing it, the action, the repetition. And when you're teaching a class, I'm sure you see new students every year, every couple of semesters or quarters or whatever. And I think it's important also for anyone listening, just the repetition
Yeah,
of what you learn and to integrate it. And you're right, that is hard, especially when you're not used to it. I don't know how many hours do you need to integrate something fully into your life, like 600 hours or something crazy,
yeah,
you know, and that's tough, especially when you get older because you have other things on your plate as you get older,
right.
your health,
But one
your
of the things that I always say to Pasio is that every interaction with another human being is an opportunity to learn. It's an opportunity to
mhm,
learn about yourself, it's an opportunity to learn about them, and it's an opportunity to learn about interpersonal dynamics. Every single interaction, all the time.
yeah, yeah. So that goes, I want to dive into your book, Connect.
Yeah, yeah,
It's called Connect, and I love that title because it's a common word that we almost never stop thinking about. So we say we're connected to people at work, connected to on social media, connected to thousands of people online. But I want to know what you mean. What is your definition of connect? What
yeah.
does it actually mean to be connected to another human being?
Well, I'll start by saying it doesn't mean to have thousands of Facebook friends. At least not in the way that my co-author and I use the word. So the book is Connect, Building Exceptional Relationships with Family, Friends, and Colleagues.
Mhm.
And um, connection means that I am better known, that I am more fully known by you, and you are more fully known by me. It starts with we drop the spun image, which by the way we don't do on social media, and we actually allow ourselves to be better known. And then when you when you have a positive reaction to me, when you like me, you like the real me, not the spun me. And that actually makes me feel a whole lot better about myself. The less I the less I disclose about who I really am, the less whatever feedback I get from you is something I can rely on, because you're only reacting to the image that I've presented. So
Yeah.
so that's one key element of connection, is being known to each other and trusting each other, trusting that whatever we disclose to each other won't be used against each other. And the
Mhm.
other elements of connection are that we are honest with each other. So it's, we're invested in each other's growth and learning. So if you're doing something that's harming us, or even if it's not harming us, but I see it harming your relationship with someone else, don't I owe it to you to say, gee, Tapasio, have you considered the fact that when you do X, it has Y impact? And I'm telling you this because I care about you and because I care about us. Um, so uh, those are all elements of a really connected relationship.
Mhm. You make or a distinction in Connect of what an exceptional relationship is. Is that kind of what you're talking about right now? So, we know relationships can be easy, exciting, or,
Right.
long lasting, but exceptional is a different word.
Yes.
Can you talk about how we can have more exceptional relationships in our life? Um, yeah, how we can integrate that.
Yeah. So I think I'll start by saying that one of the things that David's my co-author, one of the things um, that we studied in understanding what was the impact of this course on the students, which is what led to the book, um, is that relationships exist on a continuum. At one end of the continuum is contact and no connection. Those are your thousands of Facebook friends. At the other end of the continuum is what we came to call exceptional, which is what we noticed occurred in the class over and over among the students who were in class together. But the elements that I just described around becoming known and giving feedback and being invested in each other and being honest, it turns out that you need all of those if you're going to move down the continuum. And you need them just to get to robust and functional. And then you need even more of that if you're going to get to exceptional. But we're not advocating you try to turn every one of your relationships into something exceptional. That's impractical, unnecessary, frankly, and exhausting. But
Right.
if you master these skills that are attached and competencies that are attached to moving down the continuum, then you can move any relationship to at least robust and functional.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, one thing I think that separates exceptional relationships from ordinary ones is repair as well. So, if you're
Yes.
wanting to shift a certain relation, and you're right, not every relationship can be exceptional. You have your relationship with your postman, which is just very base, or a relationship with, an acquaintance friend,
Right.
and
Your
that's fine.
barista.
That's your barista, right? Hi, John. It's like we need relationships like that. They're filler, but they're necessary. It adds a little levity to your life. But if you are wanting to focus on, I feel like exceptional relationships, you can have a lot, like 10 or 50 acquaintance relationships. But shifting an acquaintance relationship, if you are truly wanting a deeper
Right.
life. Um, I think it involves also, and I think this is what you mentioned in your book too, is repair as well. Because if you want something deep, you're gonna hit a few bumpy roads. You're gonna have
Exactly.
to have repair. Um, when you watch two people repair a relationship well, what are they doing that most of us miss?
Mm. Another great question. For starters, they're truly curious about each other. They are really curious about what's going on for the other person instead of taking the stance that the only thing that's important to me is that you understand me. I have to be equally, if not more invested in understanding you.
Mm-hmm.
So um, so curiosity and inquiry are an incredibly important element of repair. Um, and the other thing that's happening is that if we've had a riff, one of the things that I do in the process of repair is show up in a way that results in you feeling truly heard and understood and emotionally met. Um, I don't make you wrong. I don't judge you. I don't. I don't try to convince you of something different. In fact, in the book, David and I talk about a huge riff that we had, and in fact, I said I would never speak to him again. This was before we wrote the book, and we'd been colleagues a long time. And towards the end of the book, we talk about how we repaired our relationship using all the skills we've talked about throughout the book. But those are the highlights. We could not enter into a repair until I felt emotionally met by him.
Yeah, I think that that's really important, and I think that emotionally met for a lot of people can just mean, you know, allowing someone's space to feel hurt and to be
Exactly.
curious
Exactly.
about that hurt in a non-judgmental way. And I think that
Precisely.
it's very difficult for a lot of people to do that because it feels like an attack. That's not who I am. I could never do that.
Right.
You
Right.
know,
Or else it
it
feels
doesn't.
like a, or else Tapasya, it feels like a compromise. Like I'm like somehow giving up that I was, when I get into the who's right and who's
Uh-huh.
wrong, we're going to have a very difficult time with repair,
Yeah,
as opposed to just
exactly.
an acceptance of the fact that we see it differently and
Hmm.
we did the best we could with the situation we had, and we care more about the relationship than about being right.
Right. Care more about the relationship than you do about how another person perceives you. And I think that can be kind of destabilizing for some people. And I think we talk a lot about self-awareness in at CivilTalk, and that's really important. Self-awareness ties into that because it shores up your confidence. You know, if you're making a mistake or a blunder, it doesn't define your character as a whole. It's
Exactly.
just you made a mistake and you were a jerk in this
Right.
moment.
Right.
I mean, you're a
And
jerk every day means in this moment you were being a jerk. You
and
know, and I
even
think,
it even and frankly, even if you don't think you made a mistake, what matters is that the other person thinks you made a mistake.
yes,
So you may not even agree that it was a mistake, but you acknowledge and you understand and you hear that that's what the other person believes and feels. And so that's
yeah,
the first step towards repair.
yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's wild how that's difficult for a lot. Even just saying that was a mistake, even if you don't believe that you made a mistake, but verbally saying that was a mistake on my end, even if you
Yeah.
don't believe it, but it's for you, has so much power and can make that other person feel so safe. And
Yeah.
it's wild how one sentence can really just really go far in repair work. Um, but
Absolutely. It makes us feel vulnerable to admit a mistake. And actually, a willingness to be vulnerable brings us closer together.
yes, yeah, absolutely. I think that can be another core. Is that something that you taught in Touchy Feely? Is just
Absolutely. The power of
mm,
vulnerability, huge component in the course.
yeah, it seems to be a pretty dominant word um, in leadership culture. But my question for you about vulnerability is it seems also to be a very romanticized word. Um, you know, when you see it on social media, do you think we have as a culture, especially with social media and life coaches and the word being thrown around a lot, um, have we romanticized vulnerability without teaching people how to practice it responsibly?
Well, it depends on what you mean by romanticized. Um, I think that I agree with you that it's a word that gets thrown around a lot without people really considering what it means, um, and what it looks like in practice. Um, and you've hit on a really important aspect of this, particularly when it comes to business and in leadership, which is vulnerability is not just blah, let me tell you everything, TMI. Um,
Mm-hmm.
we have a concept that we teach in Touchy Feely called appropriate vulnerability, which is what does the situation and the context call for with regard to vulnerability? So if I'm the VP of marketing and we've lost share 3 months in a row, and I stand up in front of my troops and I say, so gang, it's no secret that we've lost share 3 months in a row. I have no idea why. I have no idea what I'm doing, and I'm not sure I should be your VP of marketing. That might be vulnerable. It might be close to how I'm feeling, but that would be inappropriate vulnerability. But if I stand up and I say, okay, we're crushing it, that's also ridiculous because everybody knows we've lost share for 3 months and
Ugh.
nobody's going to follow me then either. But if I stand up and I say, okay, no secret, lost share 3 months in a row, I wish I could tell you exactly what's going on and what we're going to do about it. I've got some ideas. I suspect many of you have even better ideas. I've never needed you more. Which of those three leaders would you rather follow?
Yeah, the third
So
one.
that's what I mean, not rhetorical question. That's what I mean by appropriate vulnerability.
Yeah. You also talk, I mean, absolutely. I think that the term gets social media and what we're talking about right now can be kind of tough because a lot of what we're talking about, these terms can be pretty nuanced. And I think vulnerability can also very much be on par with oversharing, like what you're talking about.
Yes.
So
Yes.
I think it's important for people to understand just the nuance of vulnerability. It doesn't have to be oversharing. It doesn't have to um, be, you know, overdoing it. I think again, there's a dance to it. There's almost a grace to it that needs to be
Yeah.
recognized.
In fact,
Um,
we have a useful heuristic that might be helpful to people, which is the 15% rule. So we
right.
talk about how we all have a comfort zone, the stuff that we say without thinking twice about it. Imagine three concentric circles. That's the circle in the middle. There's a circle on the outside, which is your danger zone. In a million years, you would never share that. But there's a circle in the middle, um, which is the circle where we learn and where it's called the learning zone, and we have to step outside our comfort zone in order to learn. Uh, so and when it comes to disclosure, if I just stick with what feels comfortable, and vulnerability, I'm not going to be very vulnerable. If I get too far outside my comfort zone, I'm going to freak myself or you out. So
Mm-hmm.
that's not good either. So I have to step outside the comfort zone. But students used to say, but the minute I step outside my comfort zone, how do I know I'm not in my danger zone? So
Right.
we came up with something called the 15% rule. Step a little bit outside your comfort zone. So if I step a little bit outside mine with you, depending on how you respond, maybe you step a little bit outside yours. Now we've redrawn our comfort zone with each other a little bigger. And then we can step 15% beyond that. We don't go from 0 to 100 in 2.3 seconds. We do it thoughtfully and, to your point, deliberately, intentionally, and paying attention to each other and each other's reactions.
Yeah.
That's how we avoid the blah TMI.
Yeah, I think it's if you want to visualize it, it's just a slow drip, drip by drip by drip. Maybe one sentence or two sentences that add a bit more
Yeah, nice.
vulnerability. But I think that sometimes people want to pour the whole bucket, and it's like, whoa, I'm being waterboarded right now with
Yes,
your
yes.
vulnerability.
That's a great
Just
metaphor. Yeah.
yeah, just one like I. I have issues with that too, is oversharing. So this 15% rule is definitely a good metaphor, a good rule, sorry, for me as well. It's just one drop, one sentence that allows you to fit into that
Right,
15% rule.
right.
Um, so do you diving, conversations are so important in the work that we do and obviously in the work that you do. Do you believe most people have one conversation that they are avoiding that's sort of quietly shaping the rest of their life that they need to have?
Uh, I think a lot of people leave a lot of things unnecessarily unsaid. Um, and I don't, I think it depends on the relationship, but I think what you've just hit on, which is those conversations that you don't have, but that are important to the quality of a relationship. Regrettably, too many people have too many of those situations in their lives.
Yeah.
And I think partly because they don't know how to get started in the conversation, they don't know how to have the conversation in a way that will promote a stronger, more robust relationship. They're afraid, um, or they're afraid to be vulnerable.
Yeah. Um, I think that in a lot of your work, you're so educated and you're so known, or you know a lot about what your topic. Is there anything about human connection that still genuinely mystifies you?
Oh, that's another great. I love that question. You know, I don't know if mystified is an interesting word. I find human beings endlessly fascinating, endlessly. And I think that's because they are so unpredictable. So to the extent that we think we've got someone figured out, um, I think I think that's a recipe for potentially some trouble. Um,
Mhm.
I do find I do get curious, and I am somewhat mystified that so many people have such a difficult time with curiosity and
Right.
and, and go immediately to problem solving or to telling or to advising or I don't fully understand why so many people have such a hard time with curiosity, but my experience is that they do.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's very right. And something that I've been thinking about in my own life too. Um, yeah, seeing a pattern of that with certain people, you know,
Yeah.
especially in maybe heterosexual relationships. You see more of that in one gender than you might in another. Do you think that, you know, that's a learned trait? Do you think that's behavioral? Do you think that's more gender specific as far as people not being as curious? Do you see a pattern with that?
That's interesting. I think if you look at little kids, really, really young little kids, they are infinitely curious. And then I think
Right.
somehow that natural curiosity gets recedes as we get positively reinforced for knowing as opposed to being curious. And I don't think that's necessarily gendered. I do think that it's then exacerbated when you get into business, um, and where being right, you know, turns out to be such a currency,
Mm-hmm.
and where frankly being curious almost gets equated with being a little vulnerable, which almost gets equated with being a little weak. So somehow
Mm-hmm.
being very sure and very, very uh, whatever the yeah, very sure, whatever the opposite of curiosity and inquiry is. and
Yeah.
is rewarded.
Yeah. I think that, sometimes even asking a question might raise a flag that you don't know. And I think
Exactly.
people, especially in business worlds, founders, executives, and CEOs don't want to come off like they don't know.
Like they don't
Yet
know.
it's
Exactly.
funny for the inquisitive mind, for real inquisitive people. I think that that if you do ask a question and it's a good question, it kind of shows off how inquisitive you are, you know.
Exactly. Not to
Um,
mention the fact that it opens up a conversation for all kinds of interesting learning for both of you. Who knows where you'll go?
mhm. And I find that if you ask a question that is something where you're like, okay, this is a good question. This is, a lot of the times people will respond with, I had the same question. I'm really happy you mentioned that. A lot of the times it's just a fear of bringing something up,
Yep.
and that's understandable as well. But I think sort of, you know, uh, bringing back curiosity is so important because it really opens up your mind to empathy. And I mean, I have a background in English literature, and I always thank my literature degree for being empathetic because I had to
Yep.
write papers upon paper of how is this character feeling? What do you think this character, motive is? And I've had to put
Yes.
myself in so many characters' positions and be curious about it. And so my brain is kind of wired for that. And I understand that it's kind of been trained to do that, which is very bittersweet. Um, but I think it's a good practice
Oh,
if you
yeah.
don't have that background, is just to wonder, like, make a game out of it. You're in a chapter of a book, which is a certain chapter of your life, and ask why this character is doing what they are doing, you know?
Oh, that's interesting. The other thing that occurs to me as we're talking about this is that there are few things that will make somebody feel more cared for and valued than you being curious about them.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a really powerful way to show you care.
Yeah, especially if it also shows that you're listening too. And I think
That too.
that's really, yeah, I
That
think
too.
that's so important if you can calibrate your question and your curiosity upon the information that you're receiving. you know it,
Exactly.
it, it shows that you're an active listener. It provides a safe space. It really leads to repair very fast, and I think that repair, excuse me if this might sound ignorant, but repair does not have to be that hard. I think
Yeah.
it's like
Yeah.
really like
Yeah.
repair is could take 5 minutes in my book, but it's
Well,
like it all.
all of this doesn't have to be that hard to Pasio.
Yeah.
And yet so many people find it is. I'll share a fun anecdote with you. I did a workshop for all of the top executives at NASA many years ago where I was teaching all this stuff. And at one point I looked at them and I said, come on, guys. They were all guys. Uh, but eventually they got some women in there. But at that point, all the top executives were men. I said, come on, guys. It's not rocket science. And which was kind of fun because they were all NASA scientists. And
Yeah.
one of them looked at me like the CEO looked at me and said, oh, Carole, this is so much harder than rocket science.
I believe him. I believe that. I believe that. Truly. I believe that. I mean, yeah, rocket science is rocket science to me, but emotional bandwidth is
Yeah, much
a
harder
lot.
for most people.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, this is a good segue actually into you co-founding Leaders in Tech. Um, can you tell us a little bit about that, and what did you begin seeing in Silicon Valley that convinced you the work that you're
Mm.
doing needed to leave the Stanford campus into tech?
Well, for starters, I have a co-founder who came to me every 6 months for 10 years until he talked me into leaving Stanford. I had been his executive coach. He had learned a lot about all of this from me. He had a big exit. He was a multi-time founder. Um, and he came to me and said, Carole, we need to bring everything you're teaching at Stanford to Silicon Valley. It's desperately needed. And I said, oh, thank you. I'm flattered, but I'm not leaving Stanford. I love my students and I'm not doing a startup. So anyway, long story short, he came to me every 6 months for 10 years until he talked me into it in 2017. Hang on a minute. Hang on just a second.
Yeah, no problem.
It's burning, dear. You're yes. I'm so sorry. I had an interruption
Thing
here
is
for a
burning.
moment.
We gotta handle it. No burning.
Yes. And I hope my fire alarm doesn't go off in a moment.
It's okay. We can edit it out. No problem.
Um, anyway, pardon the interruption. So, so he talked me into leaving, and what ultimately convinced me was that I he was right about the fact that the culture in Silicon Valley was becoming the of the big companies was becoming more and more. Uh, I'm so sorry.
It's totally fine. It happens.
All right, I think it's off now. I'm
Okay.
so
No,
sorry. I hope you have some way of editing this. Otherwise, you know what?
I
We're
think it's
being
being
very real
no,
here. We're being
no.
very real.
Yeah, this is real
Life,
talk.
life
This is life.
happened. This is
Exactly.
life.
This
Um,
is going to go up unedited. So sorry.
okay, well, thank goodness that the topic is what we're talking about, which is being real,
Yeah,
um,
and being human.
being
Yeah.
human. Exactly. So back to the founding of Leaders in Tech. There one of the things that Joe said to me um, that was really compelling to me is he said, tech is this place for good in terms of products. Tech sees itself as the future of mankind from a product point of view. Shouldn't the cultures that are being built with of these companies also be for good? Shouldn't they also be just as innovative, just as progressive, just as compelling,
Mm.
just as inspiring as the products? And I said, I think you might be onto something here. So he finally talked me into it. We've now had over 1,000 leaders, mostly CEO founders of tech startups, pre-IPO, go through our programs. We're on our 11th cohort of participants. And it's been just a joy and so meaningful for me to be able to bring this work beyond Stanford because these CEO founders who are going through this program are applying it all immediately. Whereas the students,
Hmm.
they were all in their late 20s and we had
Yeah.
to wait 10 years for them to start applying for them to get into the positions in big companies to start applying what they'd learned. And by then, a lot of it had faded for them.
Right. Yeah. Well, that's really nice seeing that sort of tr- fast transition from your work to action.
Yes,
Um,
it's huge.
yeah, especially integrating that into technical intelligence and meshing with interpersonal intelligence. How does that sort of come to life? How does interpersonal intelligence sort of which you're, an expert in, how does that fuse with the technical intelligence that you're working with?
Well, one of the things that I often say is that people, in spite of the era of AI, people do business with people. So, getting the people part right, that's why the course was so big at the Stanford Business School, not hidden away in a psych department.
Hmm.
Because in the end, you might have the best, excuse me, product in the world. And unless you have a way of rallying people to make deadlines in terms of shipments and continue to improve products and find a way to market the product, you're not going to succeed. So I think that you need both. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
you need the technical expertise, you need the products, and you need to pay attention to all the people stuff. You
Yeah.
need to build teams where people work together. You need to build you need to build cultures where people tell each other the truth, so that if you've got a problem with a release, it doesn't go out and then bite you. Somebody actually raises the flag before it's ever gotten out, but not if you haven't built a culture that feels safe, where people
Mm-hmm.
actually talk to each other.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
those are all examples.
Yeah, Edgar Sheen wrote that culture is created by what leaders consistently pay attention to.
Exactly.
And yes, you've spent years inside executive teams and in your business. What do you think great leaders consistently pay attention to that maybe more mediocre leaders overlook?
Great leaders pay attention to the people. They pay attention to the people part of the business,
I
period,
love it.
full stop. Um,
Yes.
and they, it doesn't mean to the exclusion of other things,
Mm-hmm.
but they pay attention to the people part of the business just as much as they pay attention to anything else. And yet, most of the time, I see too many leaders who background the people and
Mm-hmm.
foreground almost everything else.
Wow. It seems counterintuitive. It's like the easiest thing, yet the hardest thing when you get tunnel vision. And I get
Totally,
that. I
totally.
get as an artist and creator, you get tunnel vision. But as a leader, if someone is listening to this and they want to be a good leader, tunnel vision is just not gonna. It's not gonna work.
Absolutely. Yeah.
It really isn't. Um,
I mean, you'll get away with it for a while, Tapasio, and that's the thing. A lot of leaders fall into the trap of thinking, oh, it's not that important. And maybe that's true for a while, but if you want to succeed long term, you're not going to succeed long term if you didn't pay attention to all the people stuff.
Right. Yeah, I mean, when you think about technology as well, it's really a device for holding the human spirit in a certain way, and so I think that
Nice.
if you don't have the human spirit integrated into your work and it's not fueled by the soul, it's going to feel very, um, it's going to feel robotic and it's going to feel unpalpable. And people probably aren't going to be turned on by it. They're not going to want to turn
Probably.
it on.
Why not?
So,
And now we're back to another reason why feelings are so important. How do you inspire people without feelings? How do you motivate people without feelings? You know,
mm-hmm.
the fact that feelings have gotten such a bad rap in business, there's no place in business for feelings. Well, how are you going to be an effective leader without any feelings?
Right. Right. Imagine trying to create a work of art without feelings.
Yeah.
Trying to make a movie, without feelings. It's the same thing when you're making technology.
Totally.
It's just
Totally.
not with a director who's gone to film school. It's with an entrepreneur who's gone to business school,
Nice.
So
Yeah. That's a great framing.
yeah, I think that business schools, like you say, and like you've done, need to have classes like Touchy Feely to remind them that feelings are not your enemy; they're your ally when you're making your product.
Totally. In
Um,
fact, that's exactly right. In fact, they're your competitive advantage.
mm-hmm.
It's not even an ally, it's a competitive advantage.
Yeah,
And they can be your
absolutely.
unique value proposition if you've done it right.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, if you and it's like that. I have so many artist friends who I think are very brilliant, and yet they don't know how to like rein in their vulnerability to make something more like for the market. And it's the
Mm,
opposite with people in business where they don't know how
that's
to rein in
interesting. Yeah.
their lack of vulnerability.
Yeah. That's an interesting
Um,
observation.
Yeah, because I mean, creative people, are just so like ideas and fascinating and creation, and it's like
Totally.
I really see products and beauty being formed when two of those minds can work together. But you know, people can learn how to harness one part of their brain. You know, it's like type A, type B, and like harness certain parts of their brain to have both. You know,
Yeah.
so
It's not
I
that
think it's
different with technology. It's not that different with technology. I mean, what you're saying is also true when you're, because, creating new products and leading edge technology is not that different from art.
right. Truly, it really isn't. Yeah, it really isn't. Tech, yes, that's a whole nother
Yeah.
podcast about how
Yeah.
science is art, is math is art.
Yes.
Like it's a
Yes.
whole nother. Um, but I am actually curious. You created Carole Robin AI.
Yeah.
Um, so I'm curious. What's one question you hope people? Can you explain what that is for people at first, and then what's
Sure.
one question you hope people ask
So,
it?
so the reason I mean, a developer approached me and said, "Hey, I'd like to create a CaroleRobin.ai," and I was like, "Okay, that sounds like a great idea." Um, And the reason that it appealed to me is that if you go online and you ask any one of the, you know, Claude or OpenAI or any of the, or Gemini or whatever, if you ask them, what would Carol Robbins say is the best way to give someone feedback, for example, it will give you an answer, but the answer will be about 70% right. Maybe, depending on who you ask,
Right.
sometimes less good, sometimes a little better. Um, if you go to carolrobin.ai and you ask it, what's the best way to give somebody feedback? Or even better, I'm going into a meeting with my boss. I'm really
Mm-hmm.
upset. What are some of the things I should remember? I want to give him feedback on blah, blah. Then Carole Robin AI will be 100% correct in what it answers because the only thing it's been fed is everything I ever wrote. My book, my lectures, it's been fed workshops, it's been fed Carole Robin content and only Carole Robin content. So that was why I agreed to Carole Robin AI. And it's a great place to say, I'm really struggling with my dear friend because I feel ignored by them. What should I do? Carole Robin
Right.
AI will give you an answer. Um, so you can ask it any question that you might have around how to resolve an interpersonal issue, and you'll basically get an answer as though you were talking to me.
I love that. We can all just take the Stanford course. Tell me about
You get
touchy feel.
exactly. What are the three most important things for me to remember to be more interpersonally effective? You can ask it anything.
I love this. I'm going to have to dive into that. Um, so I have two more questions. Thank you for that, by
Yes.
the way. That's like an amazing resource, and I'm going to look into that. Um, so I have two more questions as we wrap things up. Who in your own life has sort of embodied the kind of amazing, exceptional, outstanding relationship you've spent your career teaching others to build, and what have they taught you?
Um, well, I have a number of different people in my life, but my co-author, David Bradford, who was my mentor and who, frankly, he's who invented Touchy Feely, not me. Everybody thinks I invented Touchy Feely. Um,
Gotcha.
so I just became known as the queen of Touchy Feely, but he gets credit for putting it on the map originally. Um,
Got it.
what he taught me was how powerful the power of building a relationship based on honesty. Um, how how incredibly important it is to to not shy away from tough feedback, difficult feedback, because it really, really shows that you're invested in the other person. And it was not always easy, um, and it didn't always feel good in the moment, but it has in the end always served me and has been an inspiration to me to do the same for others.
Yeah, I love that. And then our last question is, within all of the sometimes heavy work that
Yeah.
you do, which is very, emotional, maybe, and obviously at times I'm assuming very strenuous. What are some practices or exercises that you do to ground yourself?
Well, I am a very, very, very committed meditator. So I meditate every day, and I meditate at least a couple of times a day. Um, and so without my meditation practice, I'd really be hosed. Um,
Mm.
and I also, just parenthetically, I've had long COVID for 4 years, and I would have never survived my long COVID without my meditation practice. So I'd say that's kind of at the top of my list, and probably the most important thing on my list, um, is that. Um, I also I also enjoy just lighthearted, spending time in lighthearted, bantery kind of ways with my husband, with my family, with my kids, my and now my grandsons. Uh, just sometimes it doesn't all have to be heavy.
Right.
Sometimes it can
Yeah.
just be fun and funny, and light. So you know, And I'll also say that one of the things that's gotten hard for me in my life as I've spent more and more time in doing this work is going to, let's say, a social event and engaging in what I consider just meaningless, you know, conversation that is like, you know, oh my God, it's like needle in the eye for me now. It's like, can we have a real conversation? Can we talk about something that's actually important to you? Or, you
Mm-hmm.
know, I, so really, really very superficial conversations are very hard for me
Mm.
now, and they become harder and harder for me every year. So I do less and less of that, go to a big cocktail party and sit around and chat over a martini kind of stuff with the strangers.
Yeah. Nothing like an in-depth conversation over a martini.
That that I'm all in.
Yeah. Sounds good. Looks like I know what I'm doing this weekend. That sounds like a lovely time. um, well, thank you so much for sharing your story and your rituals and just your life's work. I think that what you have done and what you continue to do is incredibly inspirational, and I know that our listeners will undoubtedly be inspired by you and your
Thank
work. So thank you again for being here today.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Pleasure.
And yeah, is there any website that our listeners can
Yes.
first
If you
to?
go to www.connectandrelate.com, you will find everything you might want to know about the book, including free downloadable self-assessment, a start your own learning group, all kinds of resources under activities. And if you go to www.leadersintech, all one word.org, you'll find out about our programs if you are ever interested in taking a deep dive into any of this.
Amazing. And we'll have all of those links as well at civiltalk.com. So they're just in one area as well.
Great.
Thank
Great.
you, Dr.
Thank you.
Robin, for being here. And again, we are the Civil Talk podcast. You can find more about what we do at civiltalk.com, as well as do a deep dive into Clarion, which is our conversational intelligence tool designed to help people have better conversations. Again, you can learn more and schedule a demo directly through civiltalk.com. Thank you for listening, and we'll see you in the next conversation.
Thank you.